You know, I remember a time when overriding the Supreme Court, when defying the Supreme Court was frowned upon in this country. Now it gets celebrated. Now you pat yourself on the back, apparently. Good morning, 6:05 on a Thursday. It is great to be here on KCMO. I like it even better when I see the forecast in mid-February set for the high 70s. I can get used to that around here. But anyway, Joe Biden yesterday was bragging about the fact that he is forgiving $1.2 billion in student debt for 153,000 borrowers. And he's not doing this, in secrecy. He's not doing this and saying to himself, well, I hope nobody notices because the Supreme Court technically said I couldn't do this. No, he's bragging about it. He's bragging about how the Supreme Court didn't stop old Joe.
Early in my term, I announced a major plan to provide millions of working families with debt relief for their college student debt. Tens of millions of people in debt were literally about to be canceled, their debts. But my MAGA Republican friends in the Congress, elected officials, and special interests stepped in and sued us. And the Supreme Court blocked it. But that didn't stop me. I announced we were going to pursue alternative paths for student debt relief for as many borrowers as possible. And that's the effort that's been underway the last 2 years.
So that's Joe Biden bragging about the fact that the Supreme Court is not going to stop him on bailing out student loans. So he is forgiving $1.2 billion in student debt relief for 153,000 borrowers. And all this is vote buying. Now, Joe Biden's party has been buying votes for a very long time. Nothing new for them. This is how they win elections. They buy votes. This is just a new way for them to buy votes. They've done it through various bureaucratic programs over the years, and this is their latest shtick to try to get Joe reelected for 4 more years and get the enthusiasm back up, oftentimes for younger people who are more likely to have a lot of student loan debt. So that's what he's doing right now. It's really simple, and it's clear as day. Joe Biden is trying to buy voters with your money. As you get started this morning and, maybe you're heading out the door, you're trying to get to the office early, you're busting your hump, it's Thursday, you're looking ahead to the weekend, your tax dollars by the President of the United States are being used to buy votes for his reelection campaign. Now, when you look at who's going to be helped, and I use that term loosely, with this bailout, here's what this bailout is for. The 153,000 borrowers who qualify for the latest debt forgiveness are those who are enrolled in the SAVE repayment plan. SAVE is the acronym for Saving on a Valuable Education, and who have made at least 10 years of payments. Now, here's what's interesting, though. Those who are eligible have been enrolled in repayment plans for at least 10 years and originally borrowed $12,000 or less for college. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We're all on the same page here. I'm glad you laughed there because I'm doing the math in my head and I'm saying, okay, this isn't adding up.
I'm a communications major at the liberal arts college here in the Midwest. So,
but you can do the math very quickly in your head and understand.
Wait a minute.
Hang on a second here. If you have been paying a loan that was less than $12,000 for 10 years, what's your monthly payment been? $40, $50 a month? Like, if your payment was $100 a month, fine, there's interest in there, so it's not going to be paid off. But you've made 120 months worth of payments if you've been paying for 10 years. And while I understand you got to have interest on that loan, if there was no interest, you'd have that thing paid off at $100 a month. What is the term of a loan that was under $12,000 that you've been paying for 10 years that's not yet paid off? What does that loan look like? That is just nuts as I'm thinking about the math in my head, how little that loan must be every month for you to still have it left on the books when it was under $12,000 to begin with and you're 10 years into the said loan.
Well, I put up Boardwalk Park Place and my get-out-of-jail-free card as collateral. I mean, yeah, it's play money.
Yeah.
Come on.
I mean, this is chump change.
You know, when you're writing out a check, 40 cents.
Yeah. I mean, what are you
Send
doing?
it off to the gov.
$48 a month for 25 years? Like, here's the other thing, too. If you are 10 years into a loan repayment for education, right? And you can at some point just get yourself to pay that whole deal off, then let's be honest. You are in the wrong line of work if you're still making a $35 payment or a $45 payment on a 10-year student loan. You didn't get your money's worth. You did not get your money's worth. And I'm telling you right now, I don't want to sound like Dave Ramsey here. You'll hear him at 3 o'clock on KCMO. But you know what Dave would be screaming at somebody who's still 10 years into a student loan that was under $12,000 total. He'd be yelling at you to DoorDash and Uber and, rice and beans. He'd be doing that whole deal. That's what Dave would be doing today if you called up his show. Instead, there are people who are like, oh, Joe, thank you, Joe. You've bailed me out. You've changed my future by saving you $55 a month. This is all political gamesmanship. That's what this is. Just like it's been every time that Joe Biden has gone out there and, bailed out student loan debt, despite the fact that the Supreme Court says he can't do it. It's amazing to see how some in media frame this too, by the way. The New York Times writes here, Biden chips away at student loan debt bit by bit amid high expectations. The president chips away.
I'd say so.
Meantime, if Trump was doing this, democracy dies in darkness. That's what they'd be screaming about. He has defied the Supreme Court. Instead, Biden chips away amid high expectations. The president announced another $1.2 billion in forgiveness, bringing the total canceled debt to $138 billion. But the piecemeal efforts have garnered him little praise. This written by a guy, Zolan Canos Young, out of California for the New York Times. After the Supreme Court struck down President Biden's plan to cancel billions of dollars in student loan debt, borrowers wondered how he would make good on his promise to tackle debt burdening millions of Americans. The answer? He would do it bit by bit.
How dare you?
This is so insulting.
The same way he wrecked the economy.
Yeah, bit by bit.
41 executive orders at a time.
Yep, bit by bit. Just like he destroyed foreign policy on the global level, bit by bit. And you've seen Afghanistan. You have seen Putin emboldened. You have seen the Middle East on fire the last several months, bit by bit. That should be his new campaign slogan for 2024. I can destroy things bit by bit. Not in one fell swoop. It will be bit by bit for Joe Biden. I don't want to put you in a sour mood as you get out, your coffee and you head to the office this morning, but just understand what's going on here. The poll numbers are down for this guy, and they are doing everything they can to try to bring back enthusiasm for young voters. And it's never through picking yourself up by your bootstraps and working hard and, being able to achieve what you want to achieve with your God-given skill sets. That's never what it's about for guys like Joe. It's about how can we buy you off with other people's money. OPM. That's the name of the game. 913-408-7957. And, I'd love to see, too, some type of congressional action here. I don't know what can be done, but listen, I'm not some congressional legal expert here. But how can Congress, which controls the purse strings, not stop this? I'd like to know that. I'd like to know why they can't do something about this and say, you're not getting this money. I mean, Joe doesn't just, find the checkbook and write the check out and start bailing out people's student loan debts. 913-408-7957 as we roll through the 6 o'clock hour on KCMO Talk Radio. Meantime, there is somebody who is really just bottom of the barrel in this community in the wake of what has been a tragic week here across Kansas City. We'll get to who that is and how it's just a sign of everything that's gone wrong in this town coming up on KCMO. Well, the top story in this town over the last week has been obviously the Super Bowl parade shooting and the fallout from that. But for those of us who have been in this town and haven't had our heads buried in the sand and actually talk about the news, I don't want to say we're not surprised by this. You're always surprised when something this terrible happens. But when we talk about the criminal justice system in Jackson County in particular, we've long talked about how it's slap on the wrist, back out on the streets. And there's a story that probably would have gotten more attention than it has the last few days had the news cycle not been as consuming as it has been with this one singular story. But I want to use this next story as another example of how the judges and the prosecutors in Jackson County are not doing their job to keep people safe. And I'm bringing this up early because this is a story that, I don't want kids in the car to be necessarily hearing. And I'm figuring it's 6:20 and you're either on the road to the office, maybe you're listening on your Alexa, your Google Home, your KCMO Talk Radio app. Hopefully the kids are, still fast asleep. If not, I feel for you. But I didn't want to do this in the 7 or the 8 o'clock hour because it's the kind of story that makes your skin crawl. There is a woman that you may have seen on the news, 25-year-old woman, Maria Thomas, who was charged about a week ago after her 1-month-old baby was found dead, having suffered from burns and being left in an oven. I kid you not. Maybe you missed the story because it's been a crazy week. I understand it. But on February 9th, police were called to a house near 41st and Forest Avenue. And after they arrived, first responders found an unresponsive 1-month-old child and declared the infant dead. They noticed burns on the child, and Thomas, the baby's mother, said she was putting the child down for a nap, but accidentally put the child in the oven instead of the crib. Now, many of you have been parents, even if it's been 30, 40 years ago. Mark's on his third child. She's 3 months old now, the youngest. I have a 5 and a 2-year-old. I put a 2-year-old in a crib every night. We have a third one coming here in the next couple of weeks. If Kate has her way, that third one will be here tomorrow.
I think I know where you're going. My 2 are in their 30s, but I've also done the grandkid things.
Yeah. Could you fathom putting a child into a burning oven and mistaking it for a crib? Or is that the very definition of evil? I don't want to hear about mental health. I don't want to hear about anything. That is the definition. If that is not evil when you look up in a dictionary, I don't know what is. So I bring this up because, there's been some news on the bond being reduced for this person. Here's the report from KCTV5.
Say that Maria Thomas telling them on the scene there at the home that she was putting the baby down for a nap, accidentally putting it in the oven instead of the crib. Now, the case and the filings and everything that we have found say that the police on the scene found the baby unresponsive and suffering wounds and burns and things like that. This is all happening at a home on February 9th near 41st and Forest Avenue. So today, further discussions at a bond hearing. This is a very suspicious and serious issue. Thomas facing a Class A felony of endangering the welfare of a child in the first degree and death of a child. Judge Willingham reduced it from $200,000 to $100,000 cash with the ability for her to pay just 10% of it. Her attorney, Jennifer Robinson, arguing for just house arrest with GPS tracking, with Thomas being able to live in Kansas City with her parents. There are mental health concerns that she mentioned but did not engage more with that. The state sympathizing with the mental health aspect to this case, but arguing it is still a Class A felony and she could be a danger to the community. If she does post bail, she will also not be allowed to have contact with any witnesses. She must take any medication as prescribed and complete a mental health evaluation according to that arrest warrant. So for now, she stays behind bars. Thompson is due back in court for an arraignment coming up on March 4th at 2 p.m. So those are the updates from here in downtown Kansas City. Reporting live, Joe Hennessy, KSTV5 News.
Bond reduced for Mariah Thomas, 26 years old, for putting her 1-month-old baby in an oven instead of her crib and killing her. She has been charged with endangering the welfare of this child on February 10th. She had her bond reduced from $200,000 to $100,000. So she's got to come up with $10,000. And someone who put their 1-month-old child in the oven is going to be walking around the streets of Kansas City, Missouri today, potentially. Put that into some perspective. This is as heinous, as disgusting, as despicable, as disturbing as it can possibly get. Taking a 1-month-old baby, putting that child into an oven, killing it, and claiming you thought it was the crib. I don't care what drugs you're on. I have zero sympathy for your mental health, by the way. You heard in the report that, the judge had sympathized with the mental health. I have zero sympathy for someone who would ever do such a thing. And the fact that we are reducing bond for these individuals, frankly, I don't think the charges are tough enough. Endangering the welfare of a child? Okay, it's a Class A felony, but that's the best you can do? This is in many ways everything wrong with what is going on in this town, specifically in the Jackson County, Kansas City, Missouri part of this town, where judges are weak, prosecutors are weak, and people do not fear the rule of law. You got someone who just did what they did to their child. Admitting that part, now, what you're going to blame for it, whether it's mental health or you thought it was a crib or whatever, you might have been on at the time, is a completely different story. But the individual, Mariah Thomas, is not denying what happened here and not saying she didn't do it. She is. And a judge in this town is reducing bond by 50%, saying you come up with $10,000 in cash, you walk on out the door? For an act that is that heinous? We are losing our moral compass, and it's happening right in front of our eyes here in Kansas City. And it's thanks to judges, and it's thanks to prosecutors, and it's thanks to leaders who won't call them out for what they are. And this is the microcosm of everything that has been wrong for far too long in Kansas City and Jackson County at large. This is truly a disturbing story. And speaking of things happening in this town, Mayor Lucas is going to be here at 7:30 this morning. The mayor of Kansas City joins us every week at this time, and he is 1 hour away for another very important conversation on KCMO. I do want to lighten it up after that story. I didn't want to hit you with that in the middle of the 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock hour. How much would you pay for a new professional sports stadium in this town? We'll get to it next. All right, how much you paying? Just be honest. Text in at 913-408-7957. How much would you pay to go to a Kansas City Current game with your family? Or by yourself, whatever, it doesn't matter. Kansas City Current, the new professional women's soccer team, they have that stadium opening on the riverfront. What's that going to be next season? Is that right?
This season.
This season. Oh, in a few weeks?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, I haven't been up there in a while. I didn't realize it was that soon.
We can't afford the power to light the bridge, the Kit Bond Bridge, and the stadium. The stadium lights have been on when I've driven through there last couple of months. I'm going, well, that's interesting. Lights right on the bridge. So I guess we can't afford both.
Okay, interesting. Well, I didn't realize it was right around the corner here. I mean, I did, but forgot. So we're getting ready to start the season here for the Kansas City Current, and parking is going to run you. All right, put down your coffee. Take a deep breath. You swallow the coffee? All right, good. I don't want you spitting it all over the dashboard. The parking at a Kansas City Current game is going to cost you 50 fat ones, $50. And that's without taxes and fees, by the way. So it will basically cost you the same to go to a Kansas City Current game to park as it will to go to a Kansas City Chiefs game, which is also $50, John.
My question is your parking space in the same zip code as the stadium?
No comment.
I've kind of looked down there on the riverbank going, I wonder how many bike racks they have, you know? Maybe I streetcar it to the market and hoof it the rest of the way.
Oh, man, this is bad.
From what I noticed, there's gravel parking kind of close to the stadium. And
Super in the springtime.
So gravel parking for $50?
That's what it looks like.
They're not. You can't even get a paved parking spot for $50? Are you kidding me? Is that right, Mark?
Chipping the rocker panels on your Tesla.
Oh, my goodness.
People I saw yesterday on social media were requesting it be paid before the season starts, but that's less than a month away now. So.
Well, as John said, I mean, could there be a worse time to have to go through a gravel lot?
What could go wrong?
Yeah, in April and May in this town.
So does flood insurance come with my parking space?
I mean, I'm trying to think. Why am I blanking on their names out in KCK? They got gravel parking out there. They got a dirt lot, basically.
The Monarchs?
Yeah.
T-Bones?
Yes, the T-Bones. I remember going to a couple of T-Bones games and parking in a dirt gravel lot there, kind of out in left field.
Well, you must have been going cheap there because you don't have to do that.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe.
Well, when you're across at the Speedway or if it's a big event, especially when sporting gets popular, sometimes over at the Speedway just across the way, that was not paved.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what you're talking there.
I was like out in left field, and I remember being like, oh, gosh, dust is kicking up. It's like, this was several years ago, so I don't know if it's changed. But I just have this vision of walking through a dust lot out there at the T-Bone Stadium and
That's
being like,
Speedway,
this stinks. But it was free. That's a big difference, too.
Boy.
It was free
And
parking.
it's within 15 minutes.
Yeah. So this is bad all around. And this is, some people are going to say, you're knocking women's. It's not a knock on any soccer. I wouldn't pay $50 for sporting, all right? It's not about women's soccer. I'm someone who would take my daughters to a game and would like to take my daughters to a game. But I'll tell you right now, when you factor in ticket prices, and Mark knows this, and John knows this being a grandparent, the kids are going to want a little something at the game, whether it's food or a little cheap souvenir. Tickets, souvenir, maybe a bite to eat and parking. You're now talking probably upwards of $200 to $250. That's ridiculous.
This town has supported the women's club, FCKC, before the Current, but it was grassroots, right? And they played where they could play. They played at UMKC. They played at some of the high school district complexes occasionally. So it's great to see them come this far. But, man, you've gone from grassroots to bourgeois because it was this whole thing about it's not like they're going to have Aramark in there running the concessions either. So they've got all these kind of chic eateries that they kind of did like the airport and said, okay, so we're going to have this, that, and the other. I don't know. Those are probably a little more expensive, I'm going to say, than your run-of-the-mill soaked hot dog from Aramark and that kind of thing. So there's that. We just found out the parking thing.
Yeah.
Now, the stadium's what? Maybe just under 12, 11.5, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It'll get a lot of use because they'll use it for other things during the year, which is great. But a ticket price has got to be pretty high and in high demand. So you've gone from grassroots to, woo.
Yeah, this is not cheap.
No time.
This is not like take the family out for a cheap, fun afternoon. This is expensive stuff. KCTV5 got some of the reaction last night from fans, and here's what they had to say.
$50 seems a little steep.
Little.
I wonder if they're going to pave it. That's a big question there.
The KC Current's price tag for parking raised eyebrows of sports fans across the metro.
It seems a little steep.
The Current will play 13 games at home this season. Do the math. If you park at every one of them, that's $650 plus taxes and fees just to park.
When you're paying $50, you got a family, and you got you want to buy their hot dogs and your concession stands, and it's a little steep.
While some fans think the parking fee is high, some others are willing to pay.
If it's going to generate more revenue for the team and for the city at large, then I support it.
If we'll pay that much for American football tickets and things like that, I don't know why we wouldn't pay to go see such an incredible team of really, really talented athletes.
Stop right there. Well, we pay that for American football. Yeah, and Amazon just paid $120 million to air a single playoff game on Amazon Prime next season. Did you see that? Because of supply and demand. Because 20 to 30 million people watch major NFL games in the playoffs. It's not a knock on women's soccer. I have 2 daughters, soon to be 3. I'm not here saying, no one cares about women's soccer. People care about women's soccer. They don't care enough in this economy to pay $50 for parking to go to a women's soccer game. That is an insult to every family that would consider taking their children to one of these games.
And to be fair to the owners, I think they built this on their own money, right? They didn't ask for the taxpayers' money.
They did get some kick in from the state.
Okay.
They did. There was a deal there with the state, and they actually ended up getting a little more. But no, you're right. It's not like the Royals deal where a large part of it's being subsidized. That's true. But when they're talking to these fans on this KCTV5 package, well, we pay that for the Chiefs. Yeah, it's the most popular sport in America, and they're back-to-back freaking Super Bowl champs. Are you kidding me? You going to compare apples to oranges on that? Because that's not even apples to oranges. I mean, that's apples to dog poop as far as I'm concerned.
I think part of it, too, is maybe intended to be a deterrent relative to group up, take a ride, come public, whatever, because there are few spaces down there, and there's already apartments. So, if you lived down there, next thing you know, you got yahoos parking everywhere, my phrase, but, people parking in your space. You're trying to get home Sunday. So maybe they're trying to encourage people to do some mass transit.
Maybe.
You know me, I'm the biggest sports fan around here.
Yeah.
I pay for the cheap parking spaces at the Chiefs games. I park across the way for $25 and walk all the way across 2 miles. So
you do that. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'm not getting anywhere close to the $50.
No.
And I go to KC Current games.
And you go. Exactly right. Now, think about this, too. Is it possible, as many of you are noting on the text line at 913-408-7957, is this to push people onto the streetcar?
Yeah.
Push them onto, rideshare. Well, by the way, that's not conducive for families. Unless you live downtown already along the streetcar line, why am I going to take 2 little kids to downtown Kansas City, try to find parking somewhere on the streetcar line, and then take that streetcar to a women's soccer game, and then the game lets out, I got to turn around. I got to wait for the same streetcar, hope that it shows up on time, hope that it shows up at all, hope I can fit into the streetcar with my 2 little girls, take them back to where the car is parked, and then drive home. Is that really appealing? With the amount of things that I can do with 2 little kids, and I want to take them to a game. I'm saying this as someone who wants to support this team and support what they've done for the community. But that's not realistic. Let's continue with the KCTV5 package.
The cost of parking also has fans looking at alternate ways of transportation, including rideshare to get to the games.
Rideshare.
I can't wait to go to the game. I'll pay the $50 to go to the game, but it'd be, for me, really almost, I don't live that far away. It almost be cheaper to take a Lyft ride.
If you don't want to pay that $50, you could easily park somewhere and still be able to get there. You can park in so many different lots for a lot cheaper and take the streetcar down here or walk down here.
Yeah, says the lady who clearly doesn't have kids. And you can tell she's standing in the video with her boyfriend or husband or whatever. You could easily just park somewhere else and take the streetcar.
Oh, yeah.
Said someone who's never had children ever.
I could just stay home.
Yeah. Or I could just say, you know what? Between ticket prices and concessions and time and parking, I want to do it, but not that badly. No, not that interested. This is going to hurt this current team. I mean, they'll get the forever single wokesters, I guess. But in terms of really making money with families, which is where I think their bread can be buttered, this is going to be a colossal mistake and failure for them.
They had some good momentum going into this season until this happened yesterday.
Yeah, there's a lot of blowback. And frankly, it's well-deserved blowback. 913-408-7957. Whether you were someone who was on the fence about it or you were like, yeah, I'll go support another professional team in this town, is $50 your tipping point? Where do you say, fat chance? If you woke up this morning and your cell phone wasn't working, Major outages are affecting users across the United States early this morning, even stopping some police departments around the country from being able to receive 911 calls. My goodness, keeps getting crazier and more interesting. AT&T, Verizon, and now T-Mobile users are also reporting cell outages. I woke up at my usual time, had no issues, but then I started seeing on social media in the 4 o'clock hour some other media folks in this town having issues with their cell phone. So it thought that it was local here in Kansas City, but it's not. It's national. AT&T seemed to have experienced the largest number of issues, nearly 32,000 reports at about 4:30 a.m. Several hundred outages also reported on T-Mobile and Verizon. So, I mean, all in all, small numbers, but still, you're talking about this impacting not just Kansas City, but New York, Boston, Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, Los Angeles, Seattle, San Francisco, and even Montreal up to our north. So a spokesperson for Verizon did talk about this this morning, saying the network is operating as normal and the issues seem to arise when customers try to call or text those using another telecommunications company. So I don't know if they're pointing the finger at AT&T or what's going on there, but know that this is happening. It could be happening to you this morning. I did see people in this town talking about it on social media today. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll watch out and see what's going on here. But for now, just know if your phone's not working, hey, that's the beauty of broadcast. It's like last week at the Super Bowl parade. When all the chaos was breaking out, I know hundreds and thousands of people did not have cell service down there at that time. What was their line to the world? For them to figure out what was going on in this town, in the world, was right here, radio. So we're always here for you, unless our engineers are screwing with the tower and knocking us off the air, which has happened a time or two. But, we yell at them when that happens anyway. But just know, hey, we're your outlet. Even when the cell phone is working, of course, you're getting up to the minute information of what's happening in your backyard here on KCMO Talk Radio, including Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas, who will be here in a half hour. 7:35, been 8 days since that tragedy down at the rally. We talked to him a week ago, as we do each and every Thursday, and he will be here at 7:35 on KCMO. Meantime, yesterday at the Truman Sports Complex, there was a press conference that took place from an organization that is now officially opposing the Royals and the Chiefs sales tax extension. By now, you well know that the Royals want to go downtown to that Crossroads site. They want to leave Kauffman Stadium, and they want you to vote yes on April 2nd on a 3/8 cent sales tax extension that would help fund the Royals' new ballpark down at the Crossroads. So yesterday at about 3 o'clock at the Truman Sports Complex, there was a press conference that took place with a group that has come out against the Royals wanting to move downtown and against the extension of the sales tax. And Tim Smith had this to say from outside of the Truman Sports Complex.
I think it's important to say, right outside of Kauffman Stadium, a stadium with tremendous legacy, championships have been won here, but it bears the name of Ewan Kauffman, a man who spent most of his life giving away his wealth, and Royals leadership currently is seeking to demolish this building behind me, to build something that the people of Jackson County did not ask for and that we do not need. In the next 40 days, they'll sell it to you like it's going to give you $3 or $4 billion economic impact. That's not true. They're going to tell you that this beautiful stadium behind me is crumbling to the ground and it's not feasible to repair. That's also not true. They're going to sell it to you that what you're voting on is just an extension of a tax that already exists. That's also not true. It's a new tax with new terms and new cost. You need to know that before you go to the ballot and vote.
That's Tim Smith. He's the campaign manager for the Committee Against New Royal Stadium Taxes. They have filed notice with the Missouri Ethics Commission, so they're officially an organization now. They're trying to fundraise. We know the Royals and the Chiefs have put $500,000 each into the pro side of this, trying to get this tax extension passed coming up on April 2nd. But now there's a formal organization, not just people screaming on Facebook, but a formal organization going up against the two teams. Now, here's what's interesting. The way they're approaching this, by the way, is smart. They're approaching this from the standpoint of saying this is really about the Royals and them moving stadiums downtown, which it is in part. But it also gives the Chiefs money to upgrade and renovate Arrowhead Stadium. But what I had been saying for weeks is that if this vote is about the Royals and not the Chiefs, it could go down. If this vote is about the Chiefs and the Chiefs lead the way on this vote, there's a great chance that it passes. They just won a second straight Super Bowl. So as quickly as this organization, and really the two teams that are pushing the yes side of this, as quickly as they can get a commercial cut with Patrick Mahomes and Bobby Witt and whoever else you want to put Kelsey in there if he's not too busy, gallivanting in Australia for the next few weeks. If you can get those guys on a commercial saying, vote yes, April 2nd, I don't know how a group is going to stop that. But if the narrative for this vote becomes simply about a Royals downtown stadium and how people like the K and they don't want to go down to the Crossroads and these Crossroads businesses are going to get screwed, if it becomes about that, then it is going to be a tougher uphill climb than maybe it otherwise would be. It's just like, when you talk about politics or you're voting for president. If the vote is a referendum on you probably lose. In 2016, it was a referendum on Hillary. She lost. Trump won. In 2020, it was a referendum on Trump, not Biden, and Biden won. If the referendum is on you, you are probably going to lose. And what this organization is doing, and that's why they created this name, the Committee Against New Royal Stadium Taxes. It's a very clever and smart name to use because they're branding themselves and wanting to make this specifically about a new Royal Stadium and not also about upgrades to Arrowhead Stadium.
Yeah, interesting, because I think certain groups, there's small interest, but if they all get together, in other words, some of these people are just going on about taxes, period.
Yeah.
Others it's about the Royals. Others, it's about Kauffman Stadium in and of itself.
Yes.
Thinking that somehow that'll be salvaged from the plan or maybe force the Royals to rethink. Small groups, but all together, maybe enough, right?
Yeah, you've got these kind of progressive groups in the Crossroads who are like, that's our art districts. Don't take away the coffee shops.
That'd be an angle.
You have the people who are like, I love the K. Save the K.
Angle 2.
And then you also have the people in Eastern Jack who just don't want to go downtown. Angle 3. So, yeah, all these little groups are coming together. And they're groups that would never otherwise come together. Like, they're just, that's not what they are. But if they come together and they have a well-funded organization, they might have a chance.
The old tax, Yeah, old tax, 3/8 cents. The new tax, 3/8 cents.
Yeah.
So that's in mind. Yes, it's a new tax, but still the same amount.
Exactly. And that's where you get into the nuance. I was talking to someone with the Royals, and they were like, this is not a new tax. It's like, okay, it's not a new tax. It's an extension of an old tax, but the old tax was going to expire, so it's kind of like a new tax, but not really a new tax.
Well, and one other angle was, in order to explain that on the ballot, at what point do you quit reading and just push no?
Yeah, well, that's a great point as well.
Yeah.
It's a lengthy question on the ballot because it's repealing the tax to add the tax back on to the Jackson County taxpayer, or just anyone who's buying something in Jackson County is going to pay that 3/8 of a cent. Coming up, Roger Marshall is going to be here, Kansas U.S. Senator. He visited with one of the heroes from the Super Bowl rally last week, one of the guys who tackled one of the alleged gunmen. He will tell us about that, what's going on in D.C., and then Quentin Lucas at 7:30 on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. Stream us on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Poor Commander. Joe Biden had to give away first dog Commander to relatives. Can we keep the dog and give away the president? Is that possible at all or no? Yeah, Commander had to go because he kept biting people. He kept drawing blood with attacks on Secret Service at the White House and at the vacation home in Delaware. I don't know. I mean, as far as I can tell, the president's been drawing blood from everyday Americans for the better part of 3 years, so why can't we give him away, too, while we're at it? My goodness. And that continued yesterday with another student loan bailout. So now the number is 150,000 individuals who borrowed $12,000 or less and have been paying into the repayment plan for the better part of 10 years are going to get their student loans bailed out. 153,000 borrowers. This will cost $1.2 billion. The president announcing this yesterday and bragging about defying the Supreme Court.
Early in my term, I announced a major plan to provide millions of working families with debt relief for their college student debt. Tens of millions of people in debt were literally about to be canceled, their debts. But my MAGA Republican friends in the Congress, elected officials, and special interests stepped in and sued us, and the Supreme Court blocked it. They blocked it. But that didn't stop me. I announced we were going to pursue alternative paths for student debt relief for as many borrowers as possible. And that's the effort that's been underway the last 2 years.
Could you imagine if there was another guy in the White House, King Cheeto, and he was defying the Supreme Court, what the reaction would be? Where's the Washington Post with its slogan, democracy dies in darkness? It's dying right in front of our eyes, John.
Dictator.
Yep.
Dictator.
Spending $1 billion. Congress controls the purse. Nope. I asked Roger Marshall, I pressed Roger Marshall on this last hour. I said, can't you guys do anything in Congress to stop it? And the long and short from Roger Marshall was no. There's got to be a legal loophole to stop any president from spending money without congressional approval when the Supreme Court has also struck down what he is trying to do and then bragging about doing despite not having the money from Congress and despite the Supreme Court saying this is illegal. This is about buying votes. It's a vote buying scheme. That's what it is. I mean, one political party's done this for the better part of at least 60 years now at this point. But that's the name of this game. It is a vote buying scheme. Pay off student loans and buy the vote, especially amongst a younger demographic that the polling is showing right now is very soft for this guy in the White House.
It's kind of what we say here, a small percentage play, though, right? We're pointing out how many people maybe he's talking about.
Yeah,
right?
150,000.
This is really for all the other feel-good people.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great he did that.
Well,
they got no stake in it, right?
Yeah.
That's where he gets the biggest benefit, and that's what I find annoying.
Yes. Well, that's true as well.
Right.
Now, 150,000, still 150,000.
Sure.
But you're right. In the grand scheme of 330 million Americans, it's not a big deal. But it gives hope to people who are still wanting and thinking that he's going to give them their bailout. And yeah, for some people, it makes them feel nice and warm and fuzzy inside.
Well, I'm suggesting they've calculated how little that is out of their pocket. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to say here is minimal impact there on the dollar figure. So when the critics come back, you can come back and say, there's
small
percentage.
$1.8 trillion in student loan debt out there. So this is chump change, to your point.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to imply, and it maybe ripples through the feel-good crowd as much as anything.
Well, screw the feel-good crowd as far as I'm concerned.
Touché.
I mean, you know what? If you're driving to work this morning and you've dealt with 20% cost increases across the board in your lives the last 3 years, and we all have, and maybe you've paid off your student loan debt, you're sitting there right now and you're saying to yourself, gosh, my tax dollars on a day like today are getting used to bail out somebody's student loans. That is freaking ridiculous.
Isn't there a little box on the form like the chickadee checkoff on your taxes where you can donate? Just go ahead and send my money to the Ukraine. Check that box. Right? Amen.
All right. So here is part of what happened yesterday in California. Joe Biden introed the student loan bailout, and he had somebody who is going to benefit from this student loan bailout, this most recent one that he announced this week. And here's what they had to say.
You no longer have to be forced to choose to work or to settle to simply pay off student loan debt. I'm able to continue my passion for public service and keep serving as an adjunct faculty with the Community College District and as a physician assistant at school-based health centers. I am now married. I'm able to pay my mortgage in Los Angeles. This freedom, this breathing room is...
Stop. I'm now able to pay my mortgage in Los Angeles, she says. Okay. This specific student loan bailout is for people who have a loan under $12,000 that have been making payments for at least 10 years. If you have ever had a loan in your life, a $12,000 or less loan that is extended over more than 10 years is probably what, depending on your interest rate, I don't know, 50, 60, 75 bucks a month, maybe? You're telling me that the difference for this person between paying their mortgage in Los freaking Angeles and not paying the mortgage is 50 to 75 bucks a month? If that's the case, we need to get you on the Dave Ramsey plan here. Tune in 3 to 5 on KCMO 95.7 FM. Like, it sounds good, but when you actually look at the numbers of who got bailed out this week, those are the individuals who got bailed out. People with under $12,000 loans who have paid it for 10 years, which means there's probably not a ton left on this loan anyway, and whatever's left is principal, and the payment has been minuscule in the grand scheme of things.
It's because of President Joe Biden. And just 2 weeks ago, I had my baby girl. It's a moment for me to live my dream of being a mom. Because President Biden has the back of hardworking Americans, public servants just like me. I can invest in my retirement, secure a brighter future for my daughter. It is with great honor and gratitude to introduce to you our President, Joe Biden.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. How many people delayed investing in their own futures because they were paying back student loan debts that they willingly took out? How many of you right now paid out and didn't go on vacations and didn't invest in your retirements for 5, 10, 15, 20 years because you were paying back your debt that nobody put a gun to your head and made you take out for student loans? You delayed gratification for years because you did what adults do. When you willingly commit to something and take out money and take out a loan, you got to pay it back. That's how adults operate. Now, yes, did a lot of kids get hosed and fleeced and 18-year-olds get screwed? Absolutely, that happened. And that's why the conversation around these student loans needs to be really around and really about the value of higher education, if it is the answer for everybody, if it makes sense for everybody. The answer is usually not. And the cost of higher education and why it has skyrocketed well beyond the rate of inflation for the better part of 2 generations. But if you have those conversations, then you can't look like you're from the government and you're here to help. And when your goal is just simply to look like you're helping and look like you're protecting everybody and taking care of everybody, and you're not looking for real long-term solutions that lower the prices, that, look at different alternative education options, and having the deep, thoughtful, constructive conversations and policy debates that need to be had, and you're just looking to buy votes and make people feel like you're there to help them and protect them and put your arm around them and bail out loans when they ask for it, then this is what you get. Coming up tonight in Kansas City, there's an incredible bipartisan event taking place with Mark Alford and Emmanuel Cleaver around the issue of fentanyl. Mark Alford will discuss that with us next on KCMO 95.7 FM and stream it on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So there have been less breaking news items over the last 24 to 36 hours in the wake of the Super Bowl rally shooting from 8 days ago. We had the mayor of Kansas City, Quinton Lucas, on last hour for, I thought, was a pretty productive conversation. I think he's maybe not opened up his eyes, but I would say maybe more willing to admit that going after criminals and illegal guns needs to be done. And that would include stop slapping these folks on the wrist with softer charges. You can listen back to that on the podcast later today. But here's what's fascinating, right? For all the people who have been screaming about gun control the last 8 days, of course, their narrative got blown up this week, as I told you it was going to on Sunday. Their narrative got blown up because you had 2 adults charged in addition to the 2 juveniles who are still in custody, according to the mayor. And these 2 adults, one of them had a prior with a gun, should not have been carrying, and also had an illegal gun at the parade. So the whole narrative around gun reform and gun control went up in flames. I went to CNN.com yesterday afternoon as this story was kind of unfolding, and it was pretty fresh on people's minds after Jean Peters Baker had that disastrous press conference on Tuesday. And CNN's front page, and there's got to be 100 stories on their front page, didn't have it, didn't mention it. The narrative wasn't met. They've moved on from this, and they're done. But for those who are pushing it the last 8 days, I keep thinking about the very same people claiming that stiffer gun laws are the answer when there's nothing to suggest a single gun law would have prevented this, when you had 3 of the 4 people in custody under the age of 21 and federally cannot possess and can't buy, I should say, a gun to begin with. They can't buy one, right? They can possess them under parental supervision. None of them had that. We know one guy, the first shooter, had his gun illegally, and only one of them was over the age of 21. So you've got a plethora of laws that are being broken here, and people think the answer is more laws. It's just stunning. You've got laws that are being broken already. But those very same folks, many of them, they don't want to build any jail space in this town. They've advocated against jails in this town because jails inherently are racist or something like that. You can't have it both ways. You can't scream about gun laws and then claim that the criminal justice system is inherently racist and the real victims are the criminals who never got a shot in life. Society let them down. Those 2 things don't square. And they never have. And on top of that, some of these very same people who now want to see cops be wildly proactive, who now want to say, go please, go get bad guys, go arrest people for gun laws and stuff. How many of these folks were tossing bricks at people on the plaza back in 2020? Destroying private property. And also were advocating for people who were doing those things in the summer of love for getting off the hook. Remember, this city council, in one of the worst moves in recent Kansas City history, never forget what they did. They absolved those who were arrested, many of those who were arrested, on the plaza during the George Floyd protests. They just wiped their records clean and dropped all the charges. They didn't have the prosecutor's office do it. They did it as a city council. They told people who broke the law, don't worry about it. We got your back because we believe in this cause. And while I'm not going to blame last week on that, that would be ridiculous of me to do. I will say it is part of a narrative in this town that criminals can more or less do what they want and not risk serious consequences for their actions. And they have a lot of these folks in this town, a lot of these so-called activists who are anything but, who support some of these policy things that result in these criminals feeling emboldened. And then what do when something like last Wednesday happens? They scream about gun laws. It's like, you guys don't believe in any laws. You don't believe in prisons. You don't believe in jails. Where are you going to put people that break the law? You don't even believe in putting them somewhere to begin with. Their whole narrative makes no sense to anybody who's got an ounce of common sense. But it doesn't stop them from having loud voices on social media and, writing ridiculous articles in places like the Kansas City Star. 913-408-7957. As we approach 9 o'clock, Larry is in Prairie Village. What's up, Big L?
You keep talking about they don't want to put these people in jail. Do you realize that the United States has the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world? We've got almost 3 million people in prison. So apparently they're not just turning them all loose.
Which has what to do with Kansas City's crime issue? I don't care about the U.S. What's that have to do with what's going on in Kansas City?
The jails are burgeoning in Kansas City. And I think this is obviously a talking point that all you right-wing guys do. You say the same thing.
Stop with the whatever, you want to brand everybody else.
That's what it is.
No, it's not, Larry. I just laid out facts of what's going on in this town. You present to me some facts in Kansas City disputing what I said. Go ahead.
Well, the facts are you have really no idea what crosses the prosecutor's desk. You don't know the nuances of each case. You're just blanketing saying, hey, they'll just let them go. They can kill somebody. The next day they're out on the street, which is an absolute lie.
I never. When did I say that? When did I say that people who are killing others are... when did I say that, Larry? Come on. You're painting with a wildly broad brush here. Listen, Larry, unlike you in the Prairie Village bubble, I talk to folks in law enforcement who are in the roughest parts of Kansas City who arrest the same people day after day after day. All right, fine. Month after month after month. So I'm not exaggerating.
Petty crime. That has to be for petty offenses or they would be behind bars. You don't take somebody. Well, now, what do you think they're turning people loose with? You mean if I go rob a store over in Kansas City, Missouri, they're going to say, no big deal, go home, buddy.
Yeah, Larry, I can tell you people who I know for a fact, aggravated assault charges who are not getting prosecuted like they should. Hey, Larry, have you heard about any charges in the Crown Center shooting from 6 weeks ago now? Anything there?
Have they caught anybody?
Yeah, people were arrested. And guess what?
Well,
they ain't in custody right now, Larry.
Well, what do you think the reason is? Do you think it's some kind of commie plot? Yeah. I mean, this is the insinuation. You always want to assume that there's some evil force behind the scene, and they're obviously
No, Larry, it's not an evil force. It's people who literally don't want to do their jobs. That's what it is.
Yeah, these prosecutors are saying, look, we don't care what you do. We're going to let you. Here's what you're.
So let me ask you this, Larry. Let me ask you this. Why is it that in Jackson County, Kansas City, Missouri, which also spans 3 other counties, 95% of the homicides are in a county that has 55% of the city's population?
Well, that's because there's a higher criminal element in that area. I mean, you got to face it. Here's the deal. You got a whole plethora of people in. You got a way that have no regard for consequences. They have a casual regard for human life.
Yeah.
You insult me, I kill you. Mm-hmm. When you got that, they're not thinking, oh, they'll let me go. They're soft on crime. That never enters anybody's mind.
Oh, really?
How
many criminals are you hanging out with, Larry? That's what I want to know.
I just know the human condition. You got a different idea on things.
Gee.
Okay. I mean, totally. You think they're just turning them loose,
Larry? If you don't think, have a good day. If you do not think that individuals, just like little kids, look at the world and say, "Gosh, I can get away with this potentially. I don't have to suffer any or potentially suffer any consequences for my actions." You want to talk about the human condition. Larry, you answered your own question. The human condition would suggest that if you are someone who does not believe that you are likely to get caught, and if you are, get prosecuted for something, you're more likely to do it. That's the human condition.